Tansei, I'm Creeson, Agecoutay. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. The parents of a woman whose DNA was found inside the apartment of a Winnipeg serial killer is sharing her story. Ashley Shingus from St. Teresa Point, Agecoutay Nation in northeastern Manitoba has been missing since March of 2022. Her disappearance fits the timeline of when Jeremy Skibitsky killed 4 Indigenous women. His sentencing for the 4 first-degree murder convictions takes place this week. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley and a warning. This report has some distressing details.
She brought it home from school.
Teresa Shingus holds a Mother's Day gift her daughter Ashley made years ago.
A loving person.
Ashley went missing in March 2022 at 31 years old. The following year, Winnipeg police shared this updated photo of Ashley and how she could look. Around that same time, community patrols hit the streets for leads, but none went anywhere, and then silence, until this summer during the trial of Jeremy Skibitsky.
When we went to the court, they said to us that they had a DNA on the cigarette, but they found that in that guy's home.
During the trial, it was revealed there were 16 female DNA profiles found inside Skibitsky's apartment. Now, this doesn't mean they were all victims of foul play, but in court, an investigator on the stand said they were still looking into finding the identity of 9 of those women. Last month, Skibitsky was found guilty of 4 first-degree murders for Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and a yet-to-be-identified individual given the name Masquerade Agecoutay, or Buffalo Woman. Looking at her daughter's ID.
She sent it back when she said, "Mom, I don't want to lose my ID cards."
Teresa talks about when news about Buffalo Woman became public in late 2022. She and her husband were swabbed for DNA. But some weeks later, they learned they weren't a match. After hearing in court about Ashley's DNA in that apartment, Albert says police contacted him.
What they were saying to me, we're not giving up yet. After the trial and that, they might go and see that person again and ask them questions.
Winnipeg police won't confirm what Albert is saying, but they do say Ashley's case is still an active missing persons investigation. Often, timelines of missing persons cases are hard to trace. The Shingus family knows this, as they too struggle with their own memories as time passes. Albert recalls the last time he saw his daughter.
She was slim. She had long hair.
At the time, he was living in Winnipeg's core and going to treatment. He ran into her at a convenience store and invited her to his place.
She stepped almost against by my door. Hey, and she stayed with me that one night.
When he woke up the next morning, she was gone. He can't remember the exact day, only there was COVID restrictions at the time. By then, Ashley was transient, her family said, after fleeing domestic violence. Her 2 older kids were already back in St. Teresa Point, living in the family home, her youngest child she had while living in the city, in care of Child and Family Services.
I should have went out and picked her up.
With a childhood photo of Ashley and their 3 other kids on the table, they talk about why Ashley left St. Teresa Point around 2016.
We're overcrowded in each houses. We don't have enough room for anybody.
In the St. Teresa Agecoutay Nation, there's roughly 300 houses for about 3,500 people. That means there is often 3 or 4 generations living in one home. In the Shingus home, there were 15 people in the house when Ashley left.
I want to have my own, a place where I can look after my kids, she said.
A vision her mother didn't want to interfere with. Now, all these years later, Teresa faces her own spiritual visions.
The Creator had her already. I'll say it's a dream, but it's so very real.
In October, a search will begin at this landfill on the outskirts of Winnipeg for Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, 2 of the 4 women that Skibitsky killed. Albert believes his daughter may have ended up here too.
If she's in a landfill, we could find her.
He's anxious for this week's sentencing hearing for Skibitsky to be over because Albert believes the police will continue to press Skibitsky about Ashley.
Now and then I cry. Now and then I get frustrated. Now and then I get mad.
as the family waits and holds on to one of the few physical memories left.
I love you. Love, Ashley.
T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The sentencing date for Skibitsky is this Wednesday. Tomorrow we will have a story about one of those women he killed and the people behind gifting Buffalo woman her name. And if you are triggered by this report, supports are available 24/7 through the MMIWG support line. That number is 1-844-413-6649. Manitoba is denying responsibility for the death of Crystal Moso. The 31-year-old mother was from the Ebb and Flow First Nation. Moso died on May 25, 2021, while COVID-19 positive. This happened after an attempt to airlift her from Brandon, Manitoba to a hospital in Ottawa. In March of 2023, Moso's family filed a lawsuit against the Manitoba government, 3 unnamed defendants, and other health authorities. The suit claimed that Manitoba breached its duty of care leading up to Moso's death and violated her charter rights to life, liberty, and security. It cited a lack of ICU beds, an inadequate air ambulance, and a failure to provide standard critical care as evidence. The province filed a statement of defense in June where it defended its actions and argued they did not violate Moso's charter rights. None of the allegations have been proven in court. The chief of Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation in northern Alberta is accusing the province's energy regulator of what he calls environmental racism after they fined Imperial Energy $50,000 for a toxic spill. Chief Alan Adam called the amount meager. Last Thursday, the province concluded Imperial broke environmental law when toxic wastewater seeped outside their boundaries in 2022. Chief Adams' community lies downstream from the site. He says oil companies routinely get away with wrongdoings because there are no severe consequences. Although the $50,000 fine is the maximum allowed under Alberta law, Imperial reported $1.1 billion in income in the second quarter of 2024. Chief Adams says surrounding Indigenous communities were not told of the spill for 9 months. They are suing the provincial regulator for failing to keep them informed. Ottawa's Capital Pride Parade happened this past Sunday, and this year's edition is generating a fair amount of controversy after organizers released a solidarity statement with Palestinians earlier this month. APTN's Fraser Needham talked to 2 Indigenous people who are involved in the parade, and both say the solidarity statement was the right thing to do.
Last year's Pride Parade was a crowded and rousing success. Kelly Robinson was surprised when Capital Pride approached her to be Grand Marshal for this year's edition of the parade.
They were like, we really, love your advocacy, how you use your voice and how authentic you are, and we would really love for you to come join us for Capital Pride. And so
they are a Cree Filipino Two-Spirit actress and model
I would love to.
Who says the decision to release the solidarity statement came after extensive meetings with Pride community members.
There were a lot of discussions with other organizations around Ottawa, like there's Queers for Palestine and like a bunch of other, I think also Palestinians in healthcare in Ottawa, and they all came together and they have been talking about everything that's been going on across the world. And I think Pride really saw that, and they wanted to be able to be like, hey, I want to let you know that I support this, I'm with you guys.
But the solidarity statement has led to a number of people and organizations boycotting this year's Pride Parade. This includes Ottawa's Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, Carleton University, Loblaws, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, and the Liberal Party of Canada. A sticking point for a number of groups is characterizing what Palestinians are experiencing by Israeli forces as genocide. But Robinson says there is no question it is a genocide.
And what people tend to do when genocides are talked about is they kind of make it about themselves, when that's not the case. We're just trying to acknowledge what's happening and to share support on it, and it doesn't mean that we're trying to tear other people down in that sense. And I think some people took it as an attack on them, which I don't believe that was what Capital Pride was trying to do at all.
Patience Blush is a local Indigiqueer burlesque dancer who is also part of the Pride Parade. They agree the parade has always been a platform to stand up for those experiencing oppression, including Palestinians.
Right? We should be talking about it. We should be, amplifying the voices of marginalized communities. And so, yeah, I think Pride's kind of was like, all right, like let's take a step in the right direction and let's do this. Like, we hear our community, we see you. So let's make sure that they feel supported.
Blush adds, in particular, many Indigenous people feel they have no choice but to stand up for Palestine.
The existence of a group of people is currently right now being erased. And that's a genocide. Like, we need to stop that. And so I think a lot of Indigenous people are like, these are people who are Indigenous to their land, who are going through something that we, went through. And we also know the long-term effects of this.
Groups boycotting the parade also say that by releasing the solidarity statement, Pride organizers have created an unsafe space for the Jewish community. But Robinson says this couldn't be further from the truth.
I think Pride is one of the safest places I have ever encountered. Pride is a place to be able to be yourself and to celebrate each other and to uplift one another. It has never been a place of harming people, of putting others down. It's always been about creating space and uplifting voices.
The original parade route had to be cut in half. The reduced police presence cited as the reason. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
If you have feedback you would like to share on that story you just saw or any other story, here's how you can reach us. If you have a story you want to share with us, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories you may have missed, go to www.aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. And you can watch this newscast anytime, anywhere on YouTube. Follow us at APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The Moosomin First Nation in Saskatchewan is celebrating this month with its grand opening of its new school. That and more when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. As kids get ready to head back to school, a First Nation in Saskatchewan is ensuring they can stay close to home for their education. Recently, the Moosomin First Nation near North Battleford opened the Chief Moosomin School for students K-12. Planning for the school started in 2016, with Indigenous Services Canada investing about $37 million. The previous school had faulty pipes and offered only K-9. Now, instead of attending school in North Battleford, grades 10 to 12 will be able to learn about the trades in their home community. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu said in a news release, the new school will help students get a better education. The city of Leduc, just south of Edmonton, held a celebration for Treaty 6 Recognition Day. A group of about 20 people from different cultures learned about the signing of Treaty 6, which happened on August 23, 1876, and the histories of Indigenous peoples. It was a hands-on session as participants learned how to do beadwork. They were also introduced to the wampum belt, which are common spiritual and political items for mainly Eastern Indigenous peoples. Cultural instructor Roberta Aluk told APTN that it is important to celebrate and share Indigenous history.
So I'm just here today to talk about treaty perspectives of Indigenous people, mainly Nehiyaw people, and to also talk about wampum belts and how that was used in the eastern regions of Canada and the United States, and also how it's symbolic and significant for the numbered treaties here in Canada.
A new exhibit at the National Gallery of Canada highlights what the idea of home is through an artist's lens. It showcases 16 pieces by 6 artists. The work of 2 Indigenous artists is included in the collection. Annette Francis met up with one of them.
Anishinaabe artist Frank Shebega brought his own rendition of home to this exhibit. It includes blueprints for this res home, similar to the one he grew up in at Upsala, Ontario.
There was like the personal, but then there was also like the political, historical context of the house. So I like the idea of these different layers that go with the work.
The name of the exhibit is Home, a space of sharing and strength. The artist's depictions show good memories of home and family gatherings, but also the legacy of trauma and colonialism. Andrea Kennard says it's an important subject.
The works in this exhibition talk about the disruptions that have occurred throughout a lot of the world, in North America and beyond, in Africa specifically, and the Caribbean, where people have just been torn from their land, their community, and their cultures. And a lot of the artists in this exhibition are looking how can we redress this.
Agecoutay feels proud to have his work included in the same gallery as other Indigenous artists.
There's Radical Stitch across in the next room, which is a beadwork show. Shelley Nero's retrospective downstairs, and I did see that there's a room with Alex Janvier's work, who just passed away, and Christy Belcourt's work is in the next room, and a close friend of mine, Marianne Nicholson, is downstairs as well. So to show with them, yeah, it's an honor for sure.
The home exhibit will be on display until mid-December. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thank you, Annette. Cindy Blackstock with the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society is up next to talk about the $47.8 billion settlement of child reform child welfare program. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Over on the East Coast, St. John's 26, Charlottetown 22, Cartwright 21, the Grand River 21 as well, Saguenay 16, Val-d'Or 26, Sarnia 26, Peterborough 25, Thunder Bay 24, Timmins 24 as well, God's Lake 24, Thompson 13, Winnipeg 18, Princess Harbour 17, Regina 17, Saskatoon 14, Larange 13, Uranium City 13 as well, rain in 19 in Peace River, Fort McMurray 25, Medicine Hat 28, Red Deer 25, Tofino 19 in rain, Kamloops 26, Prince George 18, Smithers 17, 12 in Beaver Creek, 15 Mayo, Yellowknife 19, Norman Wells 18, Sax Harbor 8, Fort McPherson 16, Chesterfield 16, Baker Lake 19, and Clyde River 4, Igloolik 5. It's been almost since the Assembly of First Nations and federal government finalized a $47.8 billion settlement to reform child welfare programs. Consultations with chiefs across the country are currently underway as the AFN, the Chiefs of Ontario, and the Anishinaabe Nation are seeking support to complete the deal. Cindy Blackstock has been fighting for equality for First Nations child welfare since 2007. She recently spoke to our Dennis Ward to share her thoughts on the deal.
Cindy, thanks so much for being with us. It's been a few weeks now, at least, since this package was announced. How are you feeling about the deal that's on the table?
Well, I think that we can do much better for children across the country and ensure that Canada is held accountable for its discrimination. There are some positive things in this agreement that can be built on. But at this point, I think it's falling a bit short of stopping the discrimination and preventing it from happening again, especially after year 10, because it's only a 10-year agreement, Dennis. It's not clear what happens after that.
Right. A lot could change government-wise, too. You know, Cindy, when it comes to the consultation side, I know you're out speaking with First Nations who've asked to speak with you. What are you hearing about the consultation process so far?
Well, I think that it's feeling to many people very rushed, especially over the summer, as people are dealing with ceremony and family, and also, sadly, far too many natural emergencies. So, but despite that, what I've been so incredibly impressed with, Dennis, has been how many of the leadership and their experts have really just doubled up the effort, sometimes canceled vacations to make sure they can go through this, because they really want to make the best decision for their kids.
Now, in terms of the Canadian Rights Tribunal for non-compliance hearings, you're going to be back with that. What's that one about?
Yeah, that's on Jordan's principle, Dennis. What we've been seeing is actually we had to negotiate an agreement with Canada for it to comply with Jordan's principle, and it breached that agreement, which is material to the idea that they want people to agree to this now. And what we're seeing are thousands of cases where the department is not even opening up the request for Jordan's principle. We've seen children in urgent circumstances not getting the help that they need. And sadly, you know, this has resulted in serious damage for children, including at least the deaths of 2 young children earlier this spring. So we're doing another non-compliance order. And that's being heard on the 10th to the 12th of September. And I'm really hoping APTN will be there, as they always are, to bring this to people, because I think it's really important that we make sure the government complies and doesn't discriminate against any child.
Right. And shortly after that will be the Chiefs meeting here in Winnipeg, the vote on the $49 billion settlement. How confident are you that that's going to pass?
I don't know. I mean, that'll be up to the Chiefs, but I am concerned. I think that there needs to be some substantial amendments to this agreement to ensure that it really meets the needs of every First Nations child across the country. And I'm not sure it's enough time before September. In fact, the National Chief actually said before this was announced, you might remember, Dennis, that people would be given 120 days with the agreement, which seems like a reasonable period of time. Well, that's been shortened. And also, French-speaking chiefs only got a copy of this agreement last week. So they have not even had a chance to really go through it at all on the same terms as everyone else. So I'm hoping that actually gets pushed off and that we use this as a good information and dialogue session in September and put the vote off until people can actually really respect their free, prior, and informed consent, because this is so sacred, this work with children.
Cindy, I guess, do you feel as though you've been put on the sidelines as the AFN is taking the lead on this?
Well, we haven't been a part of it, and that was disappointing because we made clear that, well, we had to leave the agreement in principle process because we wanted to file this non-compliance order with Canada. We actually wanted to be a part of this final settlement agreement, and importantly, not just us, Dennis. Like, we're an organization, but we have so much respect for the frontline people out there delivering these services every day, youth formally in care themselves, elders, knowledge keepers, and of course the leadership. This was a fairly close negotiation, and so there weren't too many people sitting around that table, and I'd like to see that change.
Well, Cindy, appreciate you taking some time, as we know you're busy. Looking forward to seeing you here in Winnipeg in a couple of weeks.
Hey, thank you, Dennis.
That's all the time we have for this Monday, August 26th midday newscast. We'll be back again in a few hours with more stories for your evening newscast. Make sure to join us again. From everyone at APTN National News, hi miigwech, masicho. Thank you for watching.